The Stack. People, Business, Technology. With Dan Tomaszewski of Everything MSP.
Hello, everybody. Dan Tomaszewski here with Everything MSP. Welcome to another episode of The Stack. I hope everybody's doing great today. I'm very excited for today's topic. It is on cybersecurity. I mean, what other topics can we really focus on that aren't as critical of this? Cybersecurity, as we all know, is a nonstop conversation, and we're going to focus on the navigation of the cyberstorm. Those key threats facing MSPs as the year end approaches. And I have a special guest today. I have Ethan Tancredi with Huntress. And welcome today, Ethan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Dan. Thank you for having me here. I'm excited to talk about that storm and helping not only MSPs, but their clients, navigate that and
Absolutely.
helping educate, because it is a continual education. It's unfortunately, it's a journey, right? It is not a destination.
That is very true. And, focusing on cybersecurity is a daily thing, right? It's something that never ends. However, we always have to take a look at, when we take a look at the year end as January approaches, we a lot of times focus on back to the basics. And there are a lot of the basics that, should be in place. And whether they're in place for our MSP clients or not, there's still a lot of, small and medium-sized enterprises out there that don't have a lot of things in place that are critical. And so those are the type of things that, we'll talk about today. Before we get started, I'd love to have you give us a little background about your role at Huntress.
Yeah, so I am actually doing a new role now. I am a manager of our technical account management. Um, so that's my current role, but I've been at Huntress 2.5 years, where I was a sales engineer. And the technical account management team were basically providing that technical level, almost like a sales engineer post sales, to our
Yeah.
partners, helping with understanding an incident. If they need some talking through, maybe to a client, hey, this is what's going on, and this is why Dan was recommending this security, or doing webinars with partners, helping them on how to sell and position cybersecurity. And I come at this from 17 years before I was at Huntress in the MSP space. I mean, I started as a
Yeah.
part-time tech, uh, touching the keyboard, fixing things, became a dispatcher, service manager, worked my way up through senior leadership. So I've done the gauntlet of work, and love to be able to share that knowledge with our partners and my team of like how an MSP thinks and what our clients are thinking. Because I think at times it's very easy in any
Yeah.
industry to get focused too much, right? You're like, oh, everybody thinks about security all the time. I know that like an MSP is probably dealing with the printer isn't working, somebody's QuickBooks isn't loading properly,
Yeah.
right? Like their day-to-day is not necessarily security all the time. And their clients definitely aren't thinking about security all the time.
Well, remember, back in our early days when we started our careers and security was slapping some type of antivirus on a computer and calling
Yes.
it good,
Yeah,
right?
like
And
that was great. Like, hey, we have
yeah,
semantic Norton, whatever,
right, right.
like
Yeah,
we were set. Um,
exactly. Yeah, I mean, and we thought that, we're securing our clients to a level. And of course at that time, I mean, that was security, that was providing them security. And it's become so much more complex. The sophistication that is being presented to us from bad actors is just it's unbelievable. It's just mind blowing. And
it,
essentially, it sounds so cliche, but just those layers of security that we need to put in place. And I remember as we started to progress as far as needing to have different layers, I remember using, a single pane of glass as when you think about actual glass, a window, and you had one pane versus maybe multiple panes. And, if something were to penetrate through that window, if you only had one pane of glass, it's going to go right through it. You start adding those layers, you're providing some additional security and protection. And but it's just I don't think there's any easy way to put how it's gone from A to Z, and a lot of it has happened in a very short span of time. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. And at Huntress, we talk about that as a Swiss cheese layering effect, basically, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're trying to
Yeah.
protect your bread from your mayonnaise. I put my mayonnaise on the
Right.
meat first, and you don't want your bread to get soggy. So multiple layers of
Right.
Swiss cheese. But yeah, like it needs it,
Yeah.
and it has gone from A to Z. And that actually makes it a challenge at times to talk to your clients about it. Like, why, Dan, why are you telling me I needed this, not the tool? Are you just selling me on something new? Right.
Yeah.
That becomes the conversation. And like one of the ways I help our partners learn to talk about it or think about it is like talk to them about cars. So dating myself here, first brand new car I ever purchased was a 1992 Ford Escort wagon. I thought it was the bomb. Now,
Yeah.
it had anti-lock brakes, I'm pretty sure. Definitely no airbags. Definitely no power windows. Definitely, like, it was everything manual. Like, could I drive that 1992 Ford Escort wagon around today? Sure. Would I be safe
Right.
on the road? No, not at all.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and the cybersecurity, it has changed. So you want the equivalent of, your brand new car with lane assist detections, multiple airbags, crumple zones,
Right.
all of those things. That's what, as MSPs, we're trying to educate our clients about it. And unfortunately, they cost money.
Yeah.
And it becomes a risk conversation that one needs to talk about, right? Like, because you and I chatted a little bit before this, which was like security, the ultimate security. I can give you ultimate security, Dan. I can just turn off your
Yeah.
internet. Now you're totally secure, but you can't do any work. And so it becomes a balancing act. I'm sure you've seen that, right?
Yep. And and when you think about the distractions that we have, you take a look at the distractions that we had back then, and it was a car radio, right? Now we have distractions of a mobile phone that we have in our cars, and it's constantly, pinging us. And you think about front end collision alerting. And you got that person that might be looking down at their phone, and if they get too close to the car in front of them, it's going to alert them. So thank God for all these type of technologies that help to protect us. And
Yes.
and I use this example maybe too much, but I remember when my children were going through driver's education, and I think you got a couple ton vehicle that they're getting into, they need to go through appropriate training. Well, the same thing happens when we put an end user in front of a desktop, a laptop, and they're going to be driving that vehicle, if you will, for that organization. And if they don't know how to use it properly, and they don't have the technology and the tools in place on that vehicle, laptop, desktop, then essentially it could cause a major disaster for that organization. And I love to use analogies because you know as MSPs, we want to simplify technology for our clients.
Yep.
And so when we're selling to them that we're here to simplify it for them, then they come to us and say, "Why are you making it more difficult when you're telling me that I have to have, MFA in place? You're kidding me. It's going to log me out, and then I've got to log back in after a short period of time, and then I got to redo MFA." Yes.
Yep.
And it's those type of things that I like to say that the easier we make it for ourselves, yes, Mr. Client, we want to make it simplified for you, but the easier we make it for ourselves, the easier we're making it for bad actors.
Yeah.
And, yes, there are things that we can make things easier, but not everything is going to be that simple.
Yeah. And to 2 points. One is you're totally making it harder or easier for bad actors, the easier you make it for that end user, right? You don't have MFA, that makes it that much easier. Um, and the other thing that's key is that we train those young adults how to drive that car. That's what security awareness training needs to be. It needs to be creating that culture of security awareness, because like some people will derisively say, oh, the end users, they're the weakest link. I don't necessarily think
Right.
of them as the weakest link. I think they're just a large target pool, right? Like they're the big body that is multiple opportunities for a threat actor to go and try and emulate an attack at. And
Yeah.
like it's much easier to I mean, you think about a business has a firewall, a UTM appliance. Well, suddenly that has reduced that attack surface drastically. But
Sure.
300 users behind that are suddenly ripe targets to get in and around it. Um,
Right.
and this is why it is important to create a culture of security so that your end users understand why they are doing it, as well as are bought into it. So not right, because like them being bought in, they might grumble a little bit. Oh, I have to do this MFA. The system logged me out after 10 minutes,
Right.
right? But then they realize, but I understand that we are actually under attack, that there are professional criminal organizations. It is, as you well know, it's no longer the kitty in a hoodie, right, anymore. These
Right.
are these
Right.
are organizations who literally have HR teams, training manuals, etc., on how to attack things, and they have moved downstream towards the SMB market because SMB tends to not have the same kind of security things in place and become the low fruit, if you will, off of the tree to get picked. Um, and so, yeah, you need to train them and enroll them so that they, when I go and I click that link that was a malicious link, maybe a phishing email comes through as they've gotten more and more sophisticated. We could talk about Chat GPT or the likes, right, of large language models helping threat actors craft phishing messages, etc. But when that user clicks a link, enters in credentials, what I want that ideally, yes, they would never have entered the credentials. That would be
Right.
great.
Right.
But even better would be, oh, I entered my credentials. Let me call Dan. Dan's my MSP. Hey, Dan, I went to this website. Something doesn't seem right. Now you can take action and reset my passwords, right? Log me out of all devices, whatever
Yeah.
you need to do. But that's where a culture of awareness becomes critical.
And in speaking of that, the question I have for you is how can an MSP effectively balance the technical security measures with end user education to create essentially a very comprehensive security posture? Because that's a bit of a balancing act. What suggestions do you have in that area?
So I have the tactical, like, all right, these are the key things you have to do. But before that, like how you go about this is a conversation. It's talking to that client about their risk tolerance. Hey, are you really risky? We could, and also educating that. So it's finding out their risk tolerance. What, do they have compliance needs? Are they somebody who is, under, uh, is under HIPAA for PII, right? Or,
Yeah.
types of things. Understanding that, educating them about, hey, compliance says you need these security tools in place, or your cyber insurance needs these
Right.
tools in place, right? Like
Yeah.
leverage. So a great way to do it, you have that conversation, whether you have it as a quarterly business review, a whatever you call that kind of regular engagement with your client. Um, you talk about where they are falling under it and why, and you leverage these I'll say, things like cyber insurance, leverage it as the quote unquote stick. You be the carrot, like, hey,
Yeah.
this is best practice, but here's the stick over here that either you're under CMMC for some reason, or HIPAA, or PCI, whatever happens it be, right? Now you can leverage that and say, and these bolster my case. I mean, I think insurance is one of the most interesting things to think about. Be, and I'm
It
not saying
is.
that
Yeah.
just because my son's an actuary, but like
Yeah.
the whole reason, like, insurance makes their money by mitigating risk. And so if you go
Right.
look at those insurance forms that are coming out, and as you're quite aware, right, the rates have gone up over
Yep.
every year. Well, that's because they weren't mitigating their risks and understanding the risks properly. But the way they've gotten to, we need more information, they ask these detailed reports. The reason they're asking those questions is that helps the insurance understand and mitigate risk. Oh, you do have an EDR. Super. We understand now that your risk is dropping. You have a SOC behind that EDR system, that's 24/7. Super. You're going to have a lower risk because those alerts now, we have confidence, are going to be looked at in action, not just sit in an email inbox that gets ignored somewhere, right? Like, that is
Yep.
where. And so as an MSP, what you could do is leverage those tools to say, this is why this is why my special sauce of security products is so
Yep.
important. Um, the other way is frameworks, right? CIS is a great one. I love the CIS framework from a practical, like, implementation. It really helps drive that conversation that you could do with a client and walk them through that to get your tools in place as well.
Right. Yeah, and I think I love the whole ability to leverage, whether it be a cybersecurity policy in that clients working with their insurance company, to use the good cop, bad cop, because we can talk until we're blue in the face about why this needs to be put in place, but sometimes a third party can be beneficial in helping them to say, okay, I get it. I understand it. I mean, they can have all the trust in us in the world, but essentially they might still feel like we're trying to sell them something that they don't need because they may have not experienced any kind of incident yet,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
And,
Yep.
and unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's human nature. It's the way we're wired. Until we experience it, it's not going to happen to me, right?
Yes, exactly.
And yeah, and I think, we were talking about, having, our own kids, and, and how, growing up and just how things have, changed so much, and we can use those examples. We might tell our sons or daughters that, hey, you shouldn't do this or that. And, it's going to be in one ear and out the other. They might be at a friend's house and the friend's mom or dad says, hey, you shouldn't do this or that. And all of a sudden they're complying,
Yes.
and it's like, hey, as long as they're complying, that's what matters, right?
Yes.
But it's great to be able to leverage, a third party in helping them to, adopt and comply. And, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. But I think the other thing around the conversations are, you think about is something as simple as a PCI questionnaire. Um, they're not simple, first off,
No.
when you take a look at the questions, but I think a lot of times clients will call and say, or create a ticket and say, hey, I need this completed. We need this done for our insurance company. And it's like, wait a minute, we need to back things up here. This particular document, you will be signing off on it. And at the end of the day, you are responsible for this. We are here to assist you through the process. And those conversations have to be, they have to be had with those clients, and they have to understand that essentially at the end of the day, the responsibility comes down on them. And if
Yes.
there is some type of an incident, a breach, et cetera, that it is on them. We are here to assist them.
Yeah.
And I always recommend, regardless of how small or big the organization is that they assign someone, whether it be the business owner, the business leader, someone that's in a authoritative role, such as an office management role, that they are the compliance manager, that they understand that internally they have someone that's responsible for helping on the compliance side, and that will work together with them to accomplish the goals and objectives that are in front of them.
Yep. Nope. I think you're totally right that having that buy-in, right? And once again, it's getting that buy-in from the customer and the end user, right? Oh yeah, okay, I understand why I need to have a compliance person. Um,
Yeah.
and to your point about like, well, it hasn't happened to us, which is I heard that over and over again on my MSP days, right? Clients of mine be like, well, we haven't had one yet, and you say it's when, but you know, I don't think, we're too small, whatever. What you need to then do to help them is say, hey, let's plan what if it happens, right? And so
Right.
so my other passion is about doing tabletops. And this is where you can then have that conversation as well, Dan, about like, hey, let's do a tabletop about if an incident happens. So we're just prepared. Oh, yeah, okay, we understand your compliance person has the policies, knows who to talk to, right? That we have an incident. So we're not scrambling in the middle. So it's not a
Yeah.
fire drill, right? This is why you have fire drills as kids in elementary school.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's similar kind of thing. It doesn't have to be a complex, quote unquote, real attack, even that you have to do something. You could just kind of talk through like, hey, let's see what happens if we've put in place all of our great security things. We have, firewall, managed firewall, we have DNS filtering, we have we have a managed EDR solution, AVs. We've done all of these things to harden it, but the threat actor still has gotten through. Okay, now what are we going to do? And even if it's just some what if questions, right? Like, all right, what if we have to shut down and we have to take everything offline for an hour? How are we going to do it? Those become key to
Yep.
Making it so it's not uncomfortable when it does happen. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, and on one of our calls recently, there was an MSP that he essentially said, I love having the conversation with the client, saying, I'm never going to directly say to you, I told you so, but there's going to be those conversations that we've had in the past that relate to, what potentially could happen. And I'm going to refer back to, remember when we talked about this? This
remember
is why
when?
it was important. And we want to, and I think it's good to frame it that way of, we don't want to get it to a point where we have to say
Right.
that, right? But if we frame it that way to kind of prep them to this, it's not, if it will happen, it's when it's going to happen. And essentially, enterprise gets all the attention because enterprise is going to get the news. They're going to get in the news cycle, but small and mid-sized organizations are not. But it's still happening to them. It's happening to them every single day. Just now, as we're speaking, it just happened. And
Mhm.
so I guess the one thing is the complexity is it continues to get more and more complex, and we have to put the right tools in place. And I'd love, for, in a nutshell, how Huntress can help, an
Yeah.
MSP, provide a better solution, a better level of security for their clients.
Yeah. So I think how we can help in particular, I mean, we have 4 different product lines. We have a managed EDR. So the key thing to understand about us is that all of our products come from a managed standpoint. I saw this when I was on the MSP side and I first engaged with Huntress, was that I didn't have that security expertise. And so what Huntress started with the premise of hiring and building our tools is we are security experts. You can look at our founder's background, but we've continued, and that's how we innovate our products. We hire threat researchers, names you may know, like a John Hammond with, I don't know where he is on his YouTube followers nowadays,
Yeah.
but to ones who you might not have heard of, Harlan Carvey, or you had Jamie Levy on the show like 6 months ago, who maybe some people aren't as aware of, but like these are
Yeah.
people who are true security researchers. And so we have a managed EDR where it's endpoint detection response. We're looking at the processes running on the endpoints, what gets by a managed AV that we can alert on. Something that we're deep diving on right now is we're seeing an attack leveraging Clio messaging. And that is bypassing AVs, and the threat actor is using. So that's one of our core ones. Then we have we call it ITDR for identity threat detection, managed identity threat detection response for 365. Like the threat actors have totally realized that, yes, on-prem is key, but we've all moved to the cloud in some way or another and to
Right.
get control of those emails, whether that's business email compromise, or to start to get into people's SharePoint, et cetera. That's a key part of, right? So looking at that, where we're able to defend against things like session token theft, where maybe ideally you are in the data set that has enabled MFA on users. We're talking about, best practices end of year. We're still only seeing roughly somewhere between like 50 to 60% of identities that have MFA on them. So our highest number
Wow.
says 66, so that's still a third of
Yeah.
users don't have MFA or a service account or whatever somebody's spin up. So, but we'll see that session token theft. Something we're pivoting to looking at are something we're calling rogue apps, where Matt Kiley, our threat researcher who leads that product from that standpoint, is looking at, he's calling them traderware, that are, persistence that people will trick you into installing an app. Hey, Dan, your machine's not working. Your email's not going to be valid anymore. Starts with that phishing email, and click this link, and you authorize an app that suddenly gives the threat actor back-end access to all of your emails, etc. So ITDR, managed security awareness training, where we have a threat researcher, Truman, who is looking at phishing campaigns that are being done by threat actors, recreating those, and we'll push those out to your users. As well as he's looking at threats, and we have our own security awareness training with our own animators, who we create episodes targeting what we're seeing in the wild or what we anticipate. So remote work, people are going to go on vacation in the holiday season. So we pushed out our managed security awareness training was about remote work and about things to be aware of when you're on vacation and trying to work remotely. Whether that's Wi-Fi's, whether that's people walking away from computers that aren't locked, all of those basics that are out
Yeah.
there. And then our final product we've just launched is a managed SIM solution. Right now, that is ingesting logs, and where we are working on developing it more is so that it will be tied in directly with our SOC team, so that team could leverage that to find evidence of threat actors in environments. We have these threat researchers, they keep like known machine names, because we track these indicators of compromise internally. And so we've already seen the SIM solution being useful in investigations. Say, oh yeah, this is somebody who is authenticated into an environment via a machine host name that we've seen used previously for malicious stuff. And so those are kind of things that we are working on through our solutions.
And I mean, at the end of the day, running an MSP, there's nothing easy about it, right? Because it's becoming more complex, as we talked about. And in order to fully secure our clients, I mean, it would be absolutely impossible to bring on the type of talent that like bringing on all the talent that you guys have at Huntress, into each individual MSP. So leveraging, an organization like Huntress to be able to provide, that security to the client. I mean, it's the only way that it can possibly be done in today's environment, today's, landscape. And
just to echo on to the importance of that 24-hour coverage, because the threat actors,
right.
for the most part, are not necessarily in our geographic location. So they're
Right.
offset from a time zone, and they realize they can attack after hours. And having, a SOC team who we have a follow the sun staffing model. So our teams are UK, US, Australia kind of based.
Yeah.
And that becomes important. You need that expertise to understand, hey, this threat actor came in this way, right? We see lateral movement and able to identify this lateral movement actually came from the IP address that looks like it's through your VPN that doesn't have 2FA on it. Okay, we can provide that kind of report and clarity so that your team isn't like struggling trying to go, oh my goodness, what, instead of just we saw something bad,
Right.
right? Like
And
that.
yeah, and we talked earlier about just about our own house, making sure that our own house is in order. In fact, last week you and I were talking, and again, analogy that I've used many times, and sometimes I hate to use the analogies over and over, but I think they make sense. Is you have safety checks when you get on every flight, and the flight attendants are indicating that in the event of an emergency, put your mask on before helping others. We have to take care of our own environments. We got to take care of our own house before we're helping others, because God forbid there was an incident that was widespread and it hits your own MSP and it's hitting all of your clients. You're trying to take care of both at the same time. And you guys have a neighborhood watch program in place. Could you
Yep.
elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yes. So it is exactly what you said about taking care of your own house, putting your mask on before your child type of analogy. And that
Yep.
is, if you sign up for Huntress and run a trial, and you're like, you know what, Huntress isn't for me. You can ask for, and we will grant you neighborhood watch licenses where you can get EDR, ITDR, managed security awareness training, SIM for your own MSP to protect it, because we believe there is such a value in protecting the MSP community. We are targets. If you're not aware of that, please be very aware that you are a target, because you are a
Yeah.
one-to-many vector. At
Yeah.
like the threat actors know Dan's MSP, I want to get in there because of
Yep.
all the downstream places he can go. So whether you've never used Huntress, you're able to get free licenses, internal use licenses, to use it, to understand it, and to protect your own house. So you should
Yeah.
totally sign up, especially as we're coming up to the holiday season. Like, on average, we see, I think it's a 30% increase during the holiday season
Wow.
of attacks, because the threat actors know we're busy, we're distracted. This is a perfect time
Yep.
to try and launch an attack. And so this would be a time to at least protect your house. If you aren't using this, you can sign up for a free trial. We run trials. They would run basically through the end of the year at this point. So you could protect your clients through the holiday seasons, and by deploying Huntress out on all of our different platforms.
That's excellent. In fact, I have thrown up a ticker that huntress.com/start dash trial. So definitely check that out. Again, we all have to embrace the fact that none of what we do is easy, and we have to identify what are the right tools to put in place to keep ourselves and our clients protected. And Ethan, I appreciate the conversation and the knowledge. Any final words as we wrap up here today?
Uh, I think the final words is definitely revisit those low-hanging fruits of security. We talked about MFA. I will just say quickly, over half the attacks we're seeing are coming in through VPNs that don't seem to have MFA enabled on them, or RDS
Mm,
gateways without it. So look at those. Huntress is all about protecting the 99%, lowering that cybersecurity poverty line, but we need your help as well to do those security basics and harden them, just to make them a little bit, to make them that much harder for the threat actors to go in and get on. Our world-class researchers love to find new vulnerabilities, but unfortunately, what they find over and over again is it's kind of the same old playbook that the threat actors use because the basics aren't being done.
And I will say one of the things that I love about you guys is just the passion that you guys have of, wanting to find where these threats are to be able to assist MSPs.
Yes.
I mean, it's just,
It,
it's awesome. I
it,
mean,
I will say, coming from the MSP side and sitting on, I do not have the skills of a John Hammond and Matt Kiley to see those individuals like that. What they can do is fantastic, and to be on the inside, yeah, it is very cool. And the passion they have for protecting people, they're like, no, we just want to protect people. We'll share that information. I think that is the great thing about security is it should live out in the open, right?
yeah,
Security that is hidden away, is a problem, and transparency, is so important because you share that information, it protects others. And if you're not following, I didn't stage you up for this, but if you're not looking at huntress.com/ I think blog is our URL for there, you should be looking at. Our blog does have some marketing material, but it has really good just threat intel of things Huntress is seeing out there that you could be applying to your MSP day in, day out, or
yeah.
our Tradecraft Tuesday, which is, I think, second Tuesday of the month. We play Tradecraft Tuesday, which is all about just things we're seeing threat actors do and that we want people to be aware of.
Excellent. As always, Ethan, thank you so much for your time and knowledge. I greatly appreciate it. For everybody joining us today, thank you for being here. Until next time, we'll talk to you all soon. Take care, everybody.
Bye, Dan.
Thank you for listening to The Stack.